Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. The April 1st ban list for the OCG just recently dropped, and alongside it, an announcement of 2 new erratas for existing cards. For those not familiar, erratas are changes to a card's text box in its most recent printing that's meant to update how the card is used and interpreted across all previous copies. There are a lot of erratas that happen quite frequently. Cards that were made before the implementation of problem-solving card text have their text box reformatted to modern standards. This helps make it clear how the effect works, what parts are costs, whether or not it targets, that sort of thing. Effectively, these updates don't change the card, they just help make sure everyone is on the same page. I also found out that this can extend to normal monsters as well. One thing I was aware of before making this video is that there are cards like Summon Skull that have a little note clarifying that they count as an Archfiend card. This is likely due to localization choices, not wanting to straight up call them a demon so as not to scare parents. This game was introduced in the early 2000s after all. But what I didn't know is that they've actually changed the flavor text of certain cards. Elemental hero BURSTINATRIX used to say that they were the only woman elemental hero, but ever since Legendary Collection 2, printings of the card say that she's the first woman elemental hero, which was a pretty good decision since, by that time, they'd printed elemental hero Lady Heat. Fun fact, did you know that Elemental Hero Heat and Lady Heat are actually the same gender fluid monster, just at different times? It's true, they told me themselves. I'm so proud of how inclusive our game is. But erratas aren't all fun and representative. Starting with Crush Card Virus in 2014, some erratas have been used to update the card text in such a way to alter the effect entirely, much like how a patch would do for a video game. Since these changes have mostly affected cards on the Forbidden list, shortly before being taken off said list, it's safe to say that these changes have been made to shorten the list so it's easier to digest, as well as letting players use more of their old cards. And there's some good and bad to that. It is true that players can now use cards like Sangan and Imperial Order like they used to, but those end up being the exceptions that prove the rule. With perhaps a few outliers, every other errated Forbidden card has seen zero play, having been either debuffed to being nowhere near as powerful as any modern option, or in the worst of cases, completely unplayable. In situations like this, it's hard to say that you're playing with the cards that you used to, but rather with uncanny shadows of what the cards once were. And if the game ever gets to a point where the pre-errata versions are in line with current power levels, like Monster Reborn for instance, you have to go back and errata them again, but that would be a lot of effort that Konami doesn't have to put in, not to mention the ensuing confusion it would cause to everyone who's not in the loop. While it did cut down on the Forbidden list, I'm of the opinion that, instead of releasing errated versions of these cards, they should have made newly named cards with these effects, referencing their original. The game already loves referencing out-of-game concepts like the Forbidden list, so it's not out of the question for us to see more cards like that. Instead of inflating the text box for Ring of Destruction, just print a new card called Ring of Mutually Assured Destruction. Sinister Serpent could have been Sinister Servant, and you could have put the little green noodle in a tuxedo. Future Fusion could have been Far Flung Future Fusion to joke about how much longer it takes to get the part of the effect you actually want. And they don't all have to be jokes either. I think Chaos Emperor Dragon deserves an image change that represents the complete, if not unfair power they held over the Yada-Lock format. Something like Chaos Emperor Dragon, Envoy of the Beginning of the End. Maybe we throw Blackluster Soldier into the card art so the name makes a little more sense and make it look like Dragon Master Knight? That'd be pretty sweet. And that brings us to now, with the recent announcement of erratas for 2 cards, Makyura The Destructor and Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. The changes to Makyura are another example of all the cards we've mentioned up till this point. Instead of letting you activate as many traps from your hand as possible the entire turn it's sent to the grave from anywhere, you only get to activate 1 trap from your hand for the turn, and it has to be sent from the monster zone to the graveyard, so no Union Carrier shenanigans. And yeah, that really sucks. I'll be the last person to argue that Makyura, as it was originally printed, should ever be introduced back into the game, but anyone who wants to use it in a sanctioned traditional format setting isn't going to be able to do that anymore. But the more interesting case are the changes made to Red Eyes Darkness Metal Dragon. The card actually functions largely the same, except now you can only use its Summon from Hand condition once per turn, and you can only use its effect to summon a dragon from hand or graveyard once per turn across all copies, not just once per turn while it's on the field. What makes this interesting is that, while this card has remained legal in the TCG for a while, the errata was made so that it could come off the OCG ban list. And I've gotta say, after seeing the crazy guard dragon loops you could pull off with it, I think they had the right idea. But does this errata have the same kind of effect on Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon as it did on cards like Makyura The Destructor? True, even without guard dragons, one could still pull off multiple activations of Red Mid by sending it to the grave as material, then reviving it with something like Monster Reborn. But I would be hard pressed to say that abusing its effect like this was the core, long-lasting appeal of using Night Shroud's Ace Monster. That's weird to say that it's not Joey's Ace Monster. Huh. So, while the card does lose out on some power, I'm actually pretty glad to see it get its new errata. It keeps the core ability of the card intact, while adjusting the rules text to keep it from being interacted with in ways the designers couldn't possibly have foreseen when it was first designed more than a decade ago. But now that I've put that out there, what do you all think of the changes made to Makyura and Red Eye's Darkness Metal Dragon? Do you agree that certain erratas can actually be healthy for the continued usage of a popular card? Or do you think that every errata that changes the effect, no matter what, has to be stapled onto a new card? Or maybe you have an option that I haven't even considered yet. Wouldn't be the first time. Let me know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.